it is very, very important that artists focus on ownership, control, management of their intellectual properties, because these are the works that are going to take them really further. Now, the fame is good, and possibly the fame attracts value to these works, but at the end of the day, the fame is fleeting. And so we must think long term. We must think as business people and create value for these catalogs while retaining ownership.
African music is everywhere, from Lagos to London, from Accra to Atlanta, from Nairobi to New York. Our sound fills stadiums, dominates charts, and shapes global culture. But behind the applause, there is a hard question we must ask. Who really owns African creativity? Yes, for too long, our music has traveled the world, while the value stayed behind. The songs became global hits, but the creators stayed local and often broke. This is not just about music. It is about ownership. It is about power. It is about intellectual property. Because when you don't own your work, you don't control your future. My name is Omevi Idolor, and this is Just Africa on SOUQ News Television. And I'm not doing this alone. I have my favorite person with me in the studio, Emmanuel Amolo. Welcome to the show.
You have to do it right this time around.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, baby. Hello, Lagos. Hello, Nigeria. Hello, Africa. Yes, we are on the midweek edition of Just Africa. Of course, like she rightly said, we should not be taking our intellectual property for granted, because look, there's so much money to be made in it, even if there's nothing at all that you won't take out of it, that is your creative brain power or brain child. You have to make money out of it.
Yes.
That's essential. So you have to pay attention to the conversation for today, because our very delectable guests will need us to help us break down some of these things. And quite rightly, me too, I want to learn, because I don't even know that what I'm doing now is a
a few days ago, there was a trend on social media about a particular name, Rattel.
Yes, is he very dark man? And what's his name again?
Yes, so the story was everywhere that VDM has been using the name Rattel for a period of time now. Yes. But the name was not branded.
Was not trademarked. Yes.
And I have heard the CEO of Femi Wash Limited, he always talk about something. Trademark your name. Trademark your name. Trademark it. So when this topic came up, the Rattel drama came to my head, and I said, yes, everyone knew that you were using the name. Yes, you were doing, but you never trademarked it. Now you see what we're saying. So intellectual properties, trademarking them, it's very, very, very important. So for the fact that you are singing a particular song or calling someone a particular name does not mean you own it.
You own it, yeah. Even what's this? Is it Donahue? There's an American actor. He had to go trademark a statement that he often used it in a movie, right? But he had realized that a lot of people tend to ascribe that sentence or that phrase to him. And he doesn't want them to now use it as a bad thing, so you now have to go and trademark it. Yeah. Everybody, you don't even have the right to use it unless you consult him first.
You get it.
And these are people that are smarter. They are knowing that, look, at the end of the day, apart from the fact that there's money to be made, you have to also protect your birth, your creative products that you bring out. Because at the end of the day, look, you don't want them to malign your person.
Yes.
Or somebody to use it for a bad thing. So, I mean, there are so many ways to look around these ideas that you have. Trademarking is just one of it. Copyright, don't play with your copyright. No, but I think we here in Africa, we need to learn more.
Yes.
We need to learn more.
You have to take ownership of what you have. So today we examine the business behind the beats, the contracts behind the chart toppers, and the rights that decide who gets paid and who gets left out. We explore how music rights work, why African creatives are losing billions, and what must change if the next generation is to build wealth, not just fame. So the global future of African creators will not be decided by talent alone. It will be decided by knowledge, protection, and ownership, because creativity without rights is exposure, but creativity with ownership is legacy. So on today's episode, our focus is on intellectual property, music rights, and the global future of African creatives. Our guest, Rosemary Ofoegbu, is an entertainment and intellectual property lawyer and a global music business consultant. Rosemary is uniquely positioned to lead this conversation. Why? As an entertainment and IP lawyer with global experience advising artists, labels, and creative businesses across African and international markets, she bridges legal practice, music business strategy, and rights management. Her work focuses on empowering creatives to negotiate fair deals, retain ownership, and build sustainable careers in globalized industry. Hello, Rosemary. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Movie. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, you are very, very much welcome. So let's go straight into the conversation. So many African creatives focus on fame first and contracts later. So in simple terms, why is intellectual property the backbone of a sustainable music career?
Thank you very much for that question, Omevi. You see, intellectual property is the backbone and indeed the entire framework of what we do in the music industry and in the creative industry generally. And this is because the works that are created, the artistry, the music, the designs, the films, all of these are tradable commodities, which, they are works that have been born out of people's intellect and their creativity. And so these are their assets. These are non-tangible assets, which can be used as a bargaining chip or as some sort of collateral to get bigger deals or get into some other spaces. And it is very, very important that artists focus on ownership, control, management of their intellectual properties, because these are the works that are going to take them really further. Now, the fame is good, and possibly the fame attracts value to these works. But at the end of the day, the fame is fleeting. And so we must think long term. We must think as business people and create value for these catalogs while retaining ownership.
Okay, so what is the real loss an artist tends to face? Maybe the first few times, what is the real loss an artist experiences when they ignore IP, money control, or credibility generally?
I think the biggest losses that artists face would be in their rights and the royalties. Of course, these are interwoven. They are not mutually exclusive. So at the start of one's career, you get to sign away your rights, you sign away control, you sign away management. And then that is because maybe a label has promised you a big deal or a huge sum of money has been paid to you. Then that money might eventually get to finish. Of course, it doesn't last forever. And then depending on how it is managed, it gets to maybe stretch longer or disappear faster. But the biggest losses that they have will be in their recording rights, that is in the masters, because these are the rights that the labels really take control over. They take control of the recording rights in the masters, and the labels get to own these masters, while the artists get to work for them, create music, and only get paid a fraction of what their catalog is actually worth. Do you understand? And then these losses are critical because some of them are very permanent. I mean, we've had instances of artists, I don't want to mention names, who have come out in the public to decry the deals that they had at the start of their careers and how they have negatively affected them, in that some people have even lost the use of their brand names. They can't use those names anymore because they are now properties of these labels. And this is because there was no proper consultation of a proper entertainment lawyer or someone with legal expertise in the industry. And so, or they were probably just carried away with the glamour and the promises that were made to them. So these are some of the disadvantages of going with the flow and not consulting lawyers at the start of the career.
So you're a lawyer, yeah? And a fine one at that. Don't worry, I'm only just trying to tease you there. Which of these clauses do you think artists, especially African ones, tend to overlook and then they don't sign off on? That you've noticed over the years that you've been doing this? They probably just see it and they just sign off on it. They don't even know the implication.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Emmanuel. First of all, the term assignments. Now, people don't pay attention. No, that is not what it means.
Yeah, you said assignment. That's what we do.
Yes, exactly. So assignments could be homework if we were in secondary school.
Yeah.
But that's not what it means in a contract. It actually means selling off your rights. So when you are assigning your rights, you're selling it off permanently. And it is very tricky in that you may not, of course, not a lot of people do have that knowledge as creatives, which is why there's the need for proper entertainment lawyers. So you could inadvertently sell off your rights because you did not understand the wordings that were used in the contract, right? So wherever the word assignment of rights is used, I would be very careful in knowing what I'm assigning because that could lead to a permanent sell-off of such catalogs. Another clause that I would, off the top of my head, advise creatives to be wary of is perpetuity. You see that word in perpetuity? It is quite dangerous because that means that you are signing off your rights or your copyright for the entire term of copyright. And even afterwards, yes, and even beyond that. So you have sold it off or you have signed it off in a spur of the moment agreement without even understanding what you are giving away. Another clause to be really careful about will be recoupment. Now, this one is interesting because some people hear the term recoupment or recouping and they'll be like, okay, yes, of course, I'm going to earn some money from my catalog or from my music. But they don't pay attention to how many percent gets recouped by the labels and how many percent is coming to them. And then how many percent of what? Because some of these rates or ratios are really very tricky. So you may think that you're getting 50% of, someone may say, 50% royalties. And then the question that you need to ask is, okay, 50% of what? Because when you hear terms like 50% of the net artist royalties, that might just be 50% of someone else's royalties. And that person's royalties might be, 2% of the entire pie. So when you look at it, you're getting only 1% of the entire pie. While in your mind, you've thought that you're earning 50% of something.
Yeah.
I'm going to want to follow up, but I want to drop a very fast one here. What do artists ever bother about these clauses when they come to you, or they just feel, I just needed the lawyer?
Sometimes they do. I've come across some really enthusiastic creatives, because I don't want to just call them artists. That would be boxing them.
Okay.
I've come across some really enthusiastic. They are interested in knowing how the business works. Behind the glam, behind the music, behind the creativity, they want to know how the business works. They're thinking as entrepreneurs, which is very important.
How about the ones that are not thinking like entrepreneurs?
Well, that's where we come in. We get to point them in the right direction. We get to highlight some of these things and make them understand, which breaks my heart when I hear people sign deals without proper consultation, because even if you were to, it does cost money, but would you rather spend money at the start and then know that you're going into something that you fully understand, or spend millions trying to get out of it much later? Because I have had cases where people have tried to buy out their catalog, which they sold unknowingly to these labels, and they're trying to buy it out, but the buyout fee is 250 million, 500 million, $1 billion naira. Where are you going to get that kind of money from? They don't have that capacity.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this question like a very random creator, especially the ones in the music sector. Why would I need a record label?
Oh, and that is a good question because interestingly, I had a conversation about that with a friend of mine that recently the record labels are gradually being edged out, especially due to the fact that a good number of the independent artists or the artists that are coming up these days, they tend to be more independent. Some of them have funding, which is what the labels were primarily programmed to offer funding and access. Now, thanks to digitalization of the industry, you can have access to people from literally all over the world, from the comfort of your home with your smartphone or your digital devices. So the question of why you need, I wouldn't say the labels are a need right now. I would say it is good to have, or they are good to be with, depending on which label you are, depending on what you are getting out of it. Regardless of who the label is really, what are you as the artist? And this is me speaking from the position of protecting the artist's interest. What is the artist gaining out of that deal? That is what should guide you to know whether you do need or you don't need a label.
Fleshing that out, right? Because I restricted it to music first. Again, people who do creatives are in different sectors. What would those ones need if I don't need a record label for? I'm just a painter, right? And I've got creative ideas and all that. So what would I need since I don't need a record label since I'm not into music? What would you recommend that I need to have on my own side if I want to scale up?
I mean, for a painter or a fashion designer or a dancer, you may need to take your copywriting very seriously, especially when it comes to dance, because dancing is something that is not tangible, right? Yes. So you may want to take some extra focus in how you protect it. So do your dance move, record it, and then you have made that intangible move something that is tangible because it is recorded. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And then in terms of funding, I guess some of these creatives do have independent bodies or they have access to grants. Yes, so these are some of the avenues that they can use to promote themselves. Exhibitions as well for the artists. There's a fashion week for designers. And these are all places where you can get to showcase your talent and have some attention put on it and then scaling up from there.
Okay, so I want to ask Rosemary, why is legal education still missing in African creative spaces?
I wouldn't say the education is missing. I think a good number of people are still figuring things out, one. And then two, the creatives themselves feel or are sometimes very reluctant in patronizing or using the services of lawyers and people in the legal space. Now, I say this or I take this position because there are a lot of learning platforms, right? There is the Music Business for Africa, the creative industry platform that has been set up. There are several other webinars. There are books to be read. There are mentorship programs. And I feel like in terms of educating oneself as a legal professional, a lot of these opportunities are available. And I am also setting up something which is currently in the works and will be launching soon with a few other lawyers in the space as well to create more knowledge or opportunities for learning and getting practical hands-on experience for especially young lawyers and then undergraduates, because entertainment or music industry has a specialization that is not taught in universities. So it is an experience or it's a learning that you get to have when you come out of school and you're starting in the real world. So I would advise anybody who is interested to join or go do some research. Find some of these platforms where you can get to educate yourself. Read books. There are a lot of books out there that will give you the basic education or the basic knowledge that you need to start out.
I wanted to talk about international deals, but before I go to that, you talked about reading, getting books and all that. Some of our artists, let's say music now, let me just limit it to music. most of them came out from the streets. Some don't even have an idea of what we're talking about right now. Those kind of people, how do you get it? Because they just want their songs to go viral. They just want people to hear the song. The moment they hear the song, they'll invite me to celebration. They will invite me to come perform, become the next Davido, Wizkid, and the likes. So those kind of people, how do you help them practically now? How do you help them understand the importance of ownership?
Or maybe see, unfortunately, that is the problem of, and I don't even want to say it's an African problem, because we have met some people from, the US who have also gone into the business without proper consultation, or they have just gone with vibes and not necessarily protected their rights. It's rather unfortunate, but realistically, there is no way we can 100% account for every single one of these artists, because it is not exactly in our place to go into the streets to handpick. And I hope this doesn't even come out as being very harsh, but there's no way we can go handpicking the artists in the streets. Yes, we do get to hear of them when they have achieved some level of fame, but it is quite unfortunate that if they do not take the extra step to get this knowledge for themselves, and a simple click on your phone will let you know, okay, this is what and what you need to start with if you're going to take this seriously. This is now going beyond the fame, like we talked about at the start of this.
Yes.
This is going beyond seeking and chasing fame to having that entrepreneurial mindset. Do you understand me?
Yes.
So when you're now thinking of it, of yourself as a business, then you start putting these things in place. And then the first step is to go and find this knowledge. Otherwise, I'm afraid, but rights are still going to be lost. A lot of artists are still going to be moving on vibes and just hoping for that big break and chasing fame instead of chasing ownership and business.
Yes. Okay, so let's go to international deals. When African artists sign international deals, where does the power imbalance show up the most?
When they do sign some of these international, I think the power imbalance shows up more in the structures.
Okay.
Now, outside the country, there are well-established CMOs, collecting societies. There are the publishers, there are the distributors, there are, all of these organizations and unions that they have formed. Now, back in Nigeria and really in Africa to a very large extent, we don't have the greatest systems in terms of rights management, proper tracking and accountability, metadata updates. We don't really have that. So when you go into some of these deals with international organizations, the power imbalance usually shows up in one, the limits to the knowledge that is owned, especially when the artist is brokering this deal by himself or by themselves. It shows up in the limit to the knowledge that they have. It shows up to the weakness in the structures, the governments, and other unions and collective societies that we lack or are not properly functional down here. And then in terms of structure, because some of these international deals are really detailed and their languages are very, I just word sophisticated, and then not understanding, because sometimes or a lot of the time when these deals come through, they are dealing from their own side of the market or from their own understanding or their own perspective of what the African market looks like, or even what their own market looks like, and not focusing on the African market as a market on its own, trying to learn, they're trying to just basically import what they have. So that is where the power imbalance is, because we find out that their purchasing power is different, their streaming numbers are different. They have, in terms of streams and royalties, they have more, in terms of user bases, especially for the DSPs, they have more people who are premium subscribers, as opposed to back in Africa or in Nigeria, where a lot of people still use some services for free and only a fraction get to pay. So that power, or that's yeah, that power inequality, it just shows up in some of those little details.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Rosemary. Now, creatives want to associate with international names. They want, okay, I'm featuring this person in my movie. I'm featuring this person in my music. I'm featuring international brands, international names. So people tend to sign away some important things because they felt if I associate with this person, my work will go global. So what should an artist never sign away? Never. No matter how big the offer is.
So I don't think that there is a never, because I like to deal on these things on a case by case basis, right? And then depending on what you stand to benefit from the greater, or what is going to be the greater good, you may want to give away a larger percentage of something that you feel, no, I could never give. Using the example of, I think, Burna Boy and Last, that was obviously a sample. He sampled some part of yeah. And then I can't 100% say, but I believe that he had to give away some substantial part of the royalties for that sample. Right. And then the same as a lot of other artists who have had to go into some of these partnerships with artists who are, especially those who have more clout than them, who are going to be able to take them into bigger markets. You may want to focus more on collaborating and breaking into these markets as opposed to holding on tightly to what is presumably your rights and not sealing the deal per se. So it's a question of balancing the greater good, letting go of some more portion of your rights and having a wider fan base, essentially.
Okay, before I let this look like it's an all-women interview, I'm still here. Barrister, I do know that there are some areas in creatives that many of us in the creative sector are not so familiar with, right? One of it is publishing. And when we say publishing, we always tend to think it's books, right? But it tends to apply to some other things. Please explain it, because when we also see publishing, now we're thinking it's just book, right? You just sign off your publishing rights. Please explain what publishing is in terms of other creatives.
Oh, okay. So publishing in music term is essentially a world apart from what it means in books. And this is the part that a lot of people run away from because it is the mathematics of the music industry. You know how we used to run away from maths back then? We didn't like mathematics. I didn't like mathematics. So this is where you have to start calculating. Yes, that's what But really, for every music, let me start from there. For every music, there are two sets of rights. There is the master's right and then the publishing rights. Now, the master's typically encompasses what we hear as the final product. So you're listening to that song on radio or you're listening to it on the streaming service. All of that falls under the master rights. The publishing, on the other hand, it deals more with the composition. So we are now breaking that song into its different elements. First of all, there was a songwriter. Before that song was recorded, there was a songwriter. Then there was a producer. If we had a guitarist on it, there was a guitarist. If we had a drummer, there was a drummer, right? And then all of these people came together to form that one song. So that is where publishing protects. Now, publishing protects the producers, the writers, the mixing engineers, the drummers, basically everybody who took part in the composition of those songs. Now, the people who administer typically the master's rights, that would be the record labels or the artist, if the artist is independent. While on the publishing side, and this is still one song that we're talking about, bear in mind,
yes,
which is why it's a little technical and some people don't like to bother their head about it. The publishing side is really the part where everybody should be responsible for themselves because that is long-term earning. That's your composition rights. And you don't even have to vocalize on a song. You don't have to perform a song before you can own publishing rights on it. Just the mere fact that you were involved in the writing or you are the producer automatically you have some rights that have accrued to you. Now it is your responsibility to properly exploit those rights, as opposed to it being with the record label, if the artist was signed to a label, or you have to obviously exploit these rights by yourself. So make sure that your works are properly managed and registered with the CMOs, get a proper publishing deal to help you to collect, unless you decide to self-publish, which is a lot more difficult or tedious. I'll put it as tedious because it's a whole lot of work administering the publishing side. So yeah, that's really in summary, that's what publishing is about.
Thank you. In fact, this conversation is going to another level. And because of time factor, I'll quickly ask this question. Do female creatives face unique IP challenges in the music industry?
The answer is yes. And yes, and this is not even a sisterhood campaign. I personally used to have that or be of that opinion that everybody was having equal opportunities, but we have seen division lines across the kind of deals that are being offered to females and their male counterparts. So I can't quite say what exactly is causing that disparity, probably because of, the females like getting married, childcare, childbirth, and then just general development. But we have still seen, despite all of that, we've seen females who have been able to trump all of these and emerge victoriously. I mean, look at Arasta, look at Tiwa Savage. These are people who have been able to set the pace and run with it. And then more than the mainstream, a lot of female artists also have niche listeners. I will take the example of Yemi Alade, for example. Yemi Alade is a very powerful voice, and she may not be as mainstream as some people, but she is very, very, she has her own fan base, she has her own listenership. And some other artists who we may not or may not even know about, who are making good money off their music, who are getting paid, just doing what they love on their own terms. So it's not necessarily about being, on the headlines or being mainstream before you can earn money or before you can be relevant. As long as you have your own community, you have your own niche, and you're able to stand there and rule, yes, definitely, women are doing really powerful things in the industry.
Okay, so still on this lady stuff, is the issue protection or being taken seriously at negotiation tables?
I would say it's a bit of both. And it's not just about not being taken seriously. Sometimes they are not taken seriously. Sometimes the deals that are being offered, they're just radically different from what are offered to the male counterparts. In terms of funding, in terms of marketing and push, in terms of benefits and, stuff like that. So I think with a good or a strong negotiator, a good lawyer, a good manager, these deals can be turned around, no matter how bad it is on presentation. And I would always advise, if you are not satisfied, don't even be afraid. Don't be shy to walk away, because there will always be other deals that will come up.
Okay, so if you were to give an advice to people like me, I say people like me because they're all creatives, right? I leave contracts away. What would you advise us? Especially, look, many of the generations that are coming after the Gen Zs, those ones don't have time for too many classroom talks. They want actions. They don't have time to, I don't think they don't read books, but they don't have time to many technology conversations, or technical conversations rather. They want results. What advice would you give those kind of people? Because they don't have that much patience like our generation do.
The advice that I would give them is build a strong team. You see, building a strong team, people tend to underrate the effect of a solid team. You can have a team that is working for you and go to sleep or go sleep, hide yourself in your studio making music. They get to do the footwork. They get to put your music in different places.
Your team is not your friends in the neighborhood, though. So we are clear.
No, your team is not your friends in the neighborhood. Well, not necessarily, because everybody started from somewhere.
Yes.
So you need to have a solid team who is able and hungry to put your music out there. First of all, they have to believe in you. And then they want to do the work to put you out there. We say, let us all leave the trenches together. But we want to all leave the trenches.
Yeah.
Now, you should have very important or key people to have on your team. Will be your lawyer. You need to have a lawyer to review, to negotiate, to ensure that you're not going into something that is going to hurt you later in the future. Then you want to have a business manager, someone who makes business decisions, someone who goes out to broker these deals. So from performances at concert events, they want to get you endorsement deals. They want to, build your brand image, because that is also very important. They want to curate how you engage with your fans or your community, as we call them these days. And then you also want to have a road manager. And personally, I am of the opinion that a business manager and a road manager should be separate. This is because the business manager may not necessarily have the time to be on the road with the artist. So a road manager is someone who is there with him, going ahead or going with him. Sound check is there, getting the hotels logistics, ensuring that the rooms are adequate or they are sufficient, they are up to use of an artist of such caliber. You need to have your road manager. And another problem that we have seen is greed. A lot of people tend to be greedy and they be like, no, I don't need these many people. I can do this, I can do that. All because you want to keep more percentage to yourself. Listen, if more people join hands and work on one project, there's a bigger impact. So there's more money to share, as opposed to you trying to make all the decisions, circumvent decisions that have already been made, or trying to impose yourself or put yourself in charge, not listening to other people. Your resources or your access to resources are cut short because you're the one that is doing everything. You're spreading yourself thin. You're making less money. And that's just bad for everybody. So a lot of artists need to be able to say, okay, you know what? Let us collaborate. Let us work together so that we can eat together. And then it's just going to be better for a lot more people.
Okay, thank you very much, Rosemary. So how well are African governments protecting creative intellectual property today? Any policy you know about?
Well, there was the 2022, the new Copyright Act that repealed the old one. And then there have been the creative industry grants that is currently up and running for artists or for creatives in the space the government has provided some money for us to, or for creatives to be able to get some funding per se. And then other than this, there are other corporate bodies who also have provisions for funding, access to marketing opportunities. And these have all been put in place because now with the new Copyright Act, for example, there's more protection for your copyright. There's more avenues for you to challenge an infringement. And then there's more awareness, basically, for how the rights work. Even though we are still on the learning curve, but there's now more awareness and more can still be done, really. So it's a work in progress. That's what I'll say from the government. It's better than where we're coming from, say, 6-7 years ago. But we still have a long way to go in terms of, funding festivals or creating of festivals, having university tours or sponsoring some tours, creating more venues for some of these performances, or stadia rather, for performance, and the likes of things like that.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Rosemary. It's been nice having this conversation with you. Yes, we have so many other questions because I really wanted to ask about looking ahead, how the future is. But for time factor, we have to end the conversation here. We hope that next time when we call on you, you'll still be available to show up.
I will definitely be available. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a pleasure.
Yes, but before you go, this is Just Africa. I would like to know the state you're from.
I am from Imo State, Nigeria.
Okay, because Amolo actually said your favorite food was abacha.
He did not.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
They would like to throw me under the bus. I did not say anything like that. But you definitely have one.
Do I have a favorite food? I think that
Your
would be white
favorite
soup.
African food.
White soup, ofen sala, and pounded yam.
Oh, hey, man,
Calling it ofen salad sounds African than white soup.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you're going to speak your dialect to greet all our viewers, to say hello to all our viewers and everyone. This is just Africa. We want to promote our culture.
Okay, now you have thrown me under the bus. This is no. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Okay, so next time before you come, you prepare that you definitely say hello to all our viewers with
yes, I will definitely prepare
with the Igbo language. All right. Thank you very much, Rosemary, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Bye.